Welcome back to the KHS channel today. I wanted to basically talk about a topic everybody keeps bringing up, which is okay. Queen's Gambit is an opening played by white. It starts with the move d4, uh, opening with the queen's pawn, right? And black responds by playing d5. Now, note that there are other openings that can be played by black, but the Queen's Gambit, like the variations that come from it, only come after black himself decides to play d5, and this is pretty common. You'll see this opening being played at all levels basically. So it's kind of universal in that sense. And the Queen's Gambit is the move c4 on move 2. Very simple. And the idea is you're moving the c pawn to, like, up 2 squares, attacking the pawn in d5, and you're putting pressure. But not only that, you might be wondering, okay, well, this just hangs a pawn, right? What if black just takes it? Well, the entire point of the Queen's Gambit is to lose your pawn, and by losing your pawn, you gain access to this center duo that takes control of the center squares. The point is, I will give up material for a space advantage, and after c4 takes an e4, white is having a space advantage and actually has the potential to win this pawn back and or develop their pieces really fast. And what I mean by that is, let's say this pawn's hanging, right? And now, since black has taken a pawn to give you, like, to give your opponent, like, if you're in black's shoes here, right? You have just taken a pawn and you have given your opponents the entire, like, a lot of center of control. Basically, then, like, this is the entire center control is on white right now. And okay, so now you've given up your pawn, like, you've given up your space, but you've gotten a pawn, so you have to defend that pawn, right? That's like the natural logic. And by playing b5, you're defending your pawn from the bishop capturing it, right? Because you're pawn defense. Now, because your pawn is not defended, white can actually try to undermine this pawn by playing the move a4. And the point is, if you take, right, if you take, this is a horrible structure. It's a horrible structure. Not only is it horrible, you're going to lose this pawn, and then you're going to lose this pawn. There's no way you're defending both of these, right? It's attacked twice. You can only defend it maybe something like bishop d7, but this pawn is just not going to, like, this pawn is immobile, and this pawn's immobile, and this pawn's also immobile. So this pawn is a goner, by the way, right? So, like, it's just not going to work if you capture. And that's the point of a4. You're undermining the structure because this pawn can't move forward or take. It's stuck. And because it's stuck, you're attacking it. You're putting pressure on it. And by playing a4, since, like, black can't move his pawn, he might as well defend his pawn, right? Now, there's a difference between playing c6 and playing a6. And there's a big difference here. And the difference comes from the fact that these rooks are on the a file. And you might be like, whoa, 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 weren't we just talking about the pawns? Yes, we were just talking about the pawns, but a pawn capturing on b5, right, when pawn captures, this pawn is actually pinned by this rook. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, give yourself a moment to think about that. Because on captures, this rook can take the other rook. Now, that being said, you played a6, and a6 doesn't work. a6 doesn't defend your pawn, so if a6 doesn't work and c6 is your other option, then you'll play c6. Now, that being said, you might be like, okay, wait, but there's still bishop a6, there's still bishop d7, what if I defend with the bishop? What if I defend with the queen? Well, let's suppose you did, right? After your bishop and or queen ends up on the square, this knight can go to either c3 or a3, right? By the way, like, a3 would just hit both of these pawns, but that doesn't even need to be played. After knight c3, c6, even in, like, the best case scenario, you're able to hold this pawn. Now your bishop is in a terrible position. It's in a terrible position. Like, it can't go anywhere, right? And you might as well be, like, you're doing too much to protect a pawn at this point when your actual other pieces are getting trapped. So, coming back to the point, on a4, c6 is a logical reply, right? But after something like captures and knight c3, white again attacks that pawn. And notice how this rook is already active, this knight is already active, and this bishop's, like, about to be really active, right? This knight's coming into the game, and the entirety of the, like, queen side for white has already been basically developed, while nothing on black side is developed, right? Like, white is already taking the lead here. And if you, like, imagine on bishop d7, you can see how cramped black's like space is. So generally speaking, it is okay, it is acceptable to take this pawn and try to hold on to it, right? But white will get a space advantage and potentially or be able to win this pawn back, right? Depending on the exact move sequence. Now, that being said, the most common reply to the queen's gambit is to not take the pawn, meaning black refuses to take this pawn here. And as white, you need to be able to be like, okay, I'm going to play c4, but I expect my opponent to not take it. Right, like you play a gambit, but expect your opponent to not take it because you have to be able to, you have to expect both situations here. And the most common way or the two most common ways to decline d5, to decline c4 is to either play c6 or play e6. And both of these moves are different, are differing. Sometimes both c4 and c6, e6 get played, but especially for lower rated players, I would recommend as black, if you're against this, play c6. And the reasoning for that is you want to be able to develop your bishop outwards. You want to be able to so let's say on knight c3, right, which is a very common idea, you want to be able to play something like bishop f5. And of course not immediately. I'll get to that in a moment, but you want to be able to come back outside because if you play something like e6, you have already trapped your bishop inside. Now, you're going to come back and switch to the white side's perspective here. On c4, let's suppose something like c6 is played, I play knight c3, and your opponent develops, right? A very common way, especially when the light scored bishop comes out, to win a pawn in the opening is by noticing a trick, very common trick, because the bishop moved to f5, because the bishop moved, not just on a random whim, right? We're not moving on a random whim. Because the bishop moved to f5, the bishop is no longer guarding the b7 pawn, right? Now, what that means is if a piece were to attack this square, then like let's suppose the queen were to attack this pawn, then nothing is guarding this pawn. We can just capture it, right? Like if the queen was attacking it, the queen could take it. Now, that being said, notice the center is like if you count the number of attackers, there are 2 attackers here, and there are 2 defenders here. If you were to add another attacker, you would be threatening this pawn, right? Similarly, you would be threatening this pawn if you were to add another attacker there. By playing queen b3, right, you have now added an attacker on both the d pawn and the b pawn at the same time in one move. And because black doesn't have a response that defends both of these pawns at once, he's going to lose one of these pawns. Like let's suppose queen b6 is played, right? And then we trade queens. This pawn in the center, right, is gone. And then this knight can take, and this pawn's gone. So, that's very important here. And something to keep in mind is on c4, the idea is, like, let's say you play knight c3 directly, right? This is terrible. This is terrible in comparison to c4. And the reason for that is very simple, is because you can move your pawn up, and most likely your opponent can't capture. Like most probably they won't capture. In terms of how the meta of the game has developed now, and because you know they won't capture, you're developing your pawn, or let's to kind of rephrase it, you're gaining space on the queen side, and by playing knight c3 before pushing your pawn up means you're kind of giving up that space, and there's no reason for you to do that when you can get space. It's like you're giving something up, then you could have more. Like, why would you do that? That doesn't even make any sense. That's why, typically speaking, you shouldn't put your knight on c3 before pushing c4. In most cases, there are of course going to be exceptions. So c4, and probably something like e6 would be played, or c6 would be played, and depending on that, you have to adjust your gameplay. And this is like a quick overview to the main idea behind the Queen's Gambit, and hopefully this has helped you kind of understand. If you like this video, hit the like button, comment how this video could have been better maybe if you didn't like it as much. And I can do a follow-up to this video, or maybe for another opening, where you may want to see games. I know St. Louis Chess Club has kind of that format on their YouTube channel where they show master games and then explain the master games that are all relating to one type of opening, and that's really helpful sometimes. So I don't know, like, do you want these kind of quick overviews, or do you want kind of like the more in-depth analysis? Um, and it really depends on how like strong of chess players my chess audience is, and I don't know how strong you guys are unless you guys tell me, and that comments, likes, you can message me on Discord too. I'm completely fine with that. All of that stuff really does help me out. All of that stuff really does help me out. Hi, editing KayKay over here. As I was going back and editing, I forgot to mention that yes, you can subscribe and comment and do all that good stuff, and that helps me out. But ultimately, you also have to consider how it helps you out. And by being more active, I can make better videos for you. And ultimately, that's a plus for you as well as for me. So, it's a joint partnership here. It's not just you're helping me out, I'm also helping you out. Right button. Know that I will be doing a subscribers, I guess, special video. I'm planning on doing one when I hit 100 subs, and I'm planning on doing another one when I hit 1,000 subs, and I'm planning on doing something slightly different for both of them, and we'll just see if I hit those milestones or not. But if I do, it will be very, very entertaining. So hi, future KayKay over here. If you like this video, then I'm sure you'll like this one, which was the past video in this series, or this one, which was the next video in this series. And, just go and check them out.